If you wake up tired, wired, or stressed, this doesn't mean that you're aging. It means that your cortisol hormone is broken. Fix this one hormone and you can start immediately reversing your biological age. This is the Have It All movement, so that midlife male entrepreneurs can provide for their families for decades to come. Not financially, but being more present in their lives for as long as possible. So this is week 1 of the Turnback time circuit. We're going to talk to you today about cortisol. We've got 2 types of problems with cortisol, and you may have experienced these. So type 1 is very simple. You might wake up anxious, you might have high stress, you might have an afternoon crash or brain fog, or just generally feel older and more sluggish than what you are. That's sort of type 1. And then you've got type 2, which again you might resonate with. I've had these in the past, which is you wake up sluggish instead of anxious. So you're just not getting going. You might not be anxious, but you might be sluggish. You drag yourself through the morning like you've got to get through it. You're wired at night, so you really struggle to get to sleep. You can't switch off. That is a typical one of entrepreneurs, because you've got a lot going on in your life and you can't switch off. Or you've got very, very broken sleep. You find yourself waking up quite a lot and you struggle to get back to sleep after you've woken up. So if either of these things hit you, if you're type 1, type 2, or maybe even a blend of the 2, then this is the place to start with your cortisol. So I've had a few times over my entrepreneurial career where cortisol has massively spiked and I didn't have it under control. And usually these are at points of high stress. So when I was in a full-time job and I was just starting up the business, I constantly had things on my mind. I didn't just have my full-time job. I had the business that I was setting up, the property business that we initially set up. And that created a lot of high stress. I wasn't sleeping as much. I was burning out. And I probably was fueling myself with a lot of things like caffeine and things just to keep myself going. Another point was when I quit my job, and not long after that, a cleaner ran off with £10,000 worth of linen. That again brought on a lot of high stress. Recently, over the last 12 months, we have been subject to fraud within our business that cost us a significant amount of money. And during those periods of stress, that's when my cortisol spiked and sort of caused me to age a lot quicker than what I wanted to, and didn't make me into the person that I was. However, what's really interesting is, because I've been on a journey over the last few years with my health and my longevity, when we had the massive problem of the fraud not so long ago, I actually dealt with that a lot better than I did with seemingly less stressful moments in my life. Because the better you deal with your hormones, and today we're talking about cortisol, the better you deal with your hormones, specifically cortisol, the better you can deal with your stress. There are so many things that cause stress in your life, and I'll probably talk about this in another episode, but you've got things like short-term, medium-term, and long-term stress. Stress can be good or bad. If you give yourself short-term stress, that can teach your body how to deal with stress and make it a lot better for you, like exercising or saunas or ice baths, putting your body intentionally into a higher beats per minute, to give yourself that stress, that fight or flight mode. But that's short term, and that teaches your body how to deal with stress. But then you've got the long term stress over a longer period of time, which is bad for you, like overtraining, like working yourself into the ground. That sort of stuff is not good for you. And, I talk I'm going to talk about two different types of stress in the future, but you've got eustress and distress. Eustress is sort of the positive type of stress, the more short-term stress, and then you've got distress, which is more longer-term stress, which can cause a lot of physical things wrong with you, which is why stress can be what they dub as a disease. However, back to cortisol. Once I fixed cortisol, I noticed my stress massively going down. I was calmer. I was able to deal with things a lot better. And this is the point I'm trying to make. So what I'm going to get into next is how you can do some really simple things in your daily routine, in your life, to manage cortisol a lot better and get your body back into that rhythm, lower the stress so that you can perform at a higher level and therefore reverse your biological age. So I'm not saying that cortisol is the most important hormone. However, what I am saying, and this is why I'm starting with cortisol, is it's sort of the foundation. So it's something that you need to start with. If you don't get this right, then it has a knock-on effect to everything else. And the key thing with cortisol is not about making it low all the time. It's about managing it properly, because you need cortisol. If you think of it this way, and the science backs this up, cortisol is like your awake hormone, okay? You need it in abundance when you first get up in the morning. It's what makes you get going. It gives you that drive and that determination to get things done. So you need it in the morning. However, you really do not need it in the evening. And that's where it can be really damaging to you, is when you work really late or you've got something that's really pressing on you and you're constantly thinking about it. That spikes your cortisol and it disrupts your ability to get good quality sleep. So that's why you wake up in the morning feeling sluggish. That's why you have crashes at 2 p.m. because you're not managing your cortisol effectively. And again, especially with male entrepreneurs, which is who I'm talking directly to, but also with females as well, because you need testosterone. Cortisol, mismanagement of cortisol can massively deplete your testosterone, which has loads of other knock-on effects. And we'll talk about testosterone as a hormone in later weeks. But what you don't want is you don't want your testosterone to drop, because it massively drives everything else. And like I said, if those things aren't managed correctly, effectively, you will age faster. So therefore, on that note, cortisol controls your age almost more than anything else. And like I said, there are loads of hormones that are really important. But if we start with cortisol, you're going to give yourself the foundation that you need to really progress with all the other hormones and rhythms within your body. So why do entrepreneurs mess up their cortisol? There's lots of things in our lives that, as an entrepreneur, will affect what we do. And if we manage these correctly, then we can manage our cortisol correctly. And I've just listed some of the things here, so I don't forget any of them. I'm going to read them out to you. So we've got phones, teams, finances, growth, responsibility in your life, needing to provide for your family. Probably financially is what most people think about, but I believe that longevity is the highest form of providing that you can possibly do, and that will impact your bank account. And obviously the pressure that comes with all of those things. You know, all of that stuff provides unnecessary pressure on you and can have a mismanagement of cortisol. So our lifestyle as an entrepreneur naturally gives us the stressors and the things that we don't need to mismanage our cortisol production, to have it at the wrong times, to have it less at the beginning of the day and more of it at the end of the day. So you've almost got your cortisol in reverse of what you need, when you need lots of it in the morning and less of it in the evening. What happens is we don't have much of it in the morning because we've mismanaged it the day before. It takes a long time for it to build up and we end up having it too late in the day, and then it affects our sleep and it becomes a vicious cycle, so to speak, and a bad relationship with the hormone cortisol. So here we go. you're probably thinking, right, well, what do I do then to fix my cortisol? I'm going to have all these pressures in my life anyways. And yes, you're going to still have all of these entrepreneurial pressures with your business, with your family, and with everything that comes with being an entrepreneur. But I've got the 5 steps, 5 simple steps that you can do to manage your cortisol. And again, I've got them written down, so I'm going to make sure that I don't forget them and explain them properly. So we've got step 1. Step 1 is first thing in the morning, get water and mineralized salt into your body. So that's at least 500 mils of water and mineralized salts. They can be electrolytes, could be Celtic sea salt, could be Himalayan sea salt, could just be normal sea salt. But please, please, please do not use table salt. Not good for you. So needs to be at least sea salt. I use Celtic sea salt, and I use a good formulation of electrolytes with no sugar in it. So you can do that sort of stuff. So that's step 1. Step 2, and this is the real important one. So this is a really important one after you've done your water, which is to get sunlight. Morning sunlight is the best sunlight you can get. And this really gets your circadian rhythm going in the right way and manages your cortisol. So blue light from the sun, and you can get this from a sad light as well, because in the UK, where I live, it's horrible winters where we've got hardly any light until sort of 7:30 in the day, and then it drops off in the evening. But you can use a sad light in the morning for 15 minutes to half an hour. And what you need to look for is something that's got 10,000 lux, ideally, and use that in the morning to get your cortisol going and to set your circadian rhythm. So step 3 is just getting your body into a very, very low stress mode. Because when you get up in the morning, you can be quite stressed because you're getting going with everything. Everyone, when they wake up in the morning, doesn't necessarily want to get up. No one ever really does. Some people bounce out of bed and better than others, but in general, when you first wake up in the morning, it's kind of stressful. So what you then need to do, step 3, is getting almost like some mindfulness in. So that could just be 2 minutes. However, I sit down and I do some breathing exercises. I take deep breaths in and breathe out, and I do rounds of that, and that takes probably 5 to 10 minutes. But you can just do 2 minutes of just concentrating on your breath, doing a sort of 4 seconds in, 6 seconds out. Make sure that your breathing out is slightly longer than you're breathing in, and that naturally de-stresses you, allows you to focus on your breath. And you can do 2 minutes of that, and that would be absolutely perfect. But if you've got a bit more time, you could do some deep breathing and just some mindfulness, maybe even some music in the background, just to get that stress managed first thing in the morning. So step 4, and this is a pretty important one, is on your first meal, make sure that it is high in protein and high in fats, very low in carbs. What this does is it gives you the energy and fuel that you need for the day, but it doesn't put a lot of stress on your system to digest. Protein does take a bit to digest, but the minute that you add carbs in, it puts a lot of weight load. It's actually better to eat carbs in the evening to prepare you for sleep. What you'll notice, if you have a lot of bread or pasta or rice, lots of starchy carbohydrates, potatoes, what you'll notice is you get very tired afterwards. You don't get this effect as much when you eat high protein and high fat. So if you're going to eat carbs, save it for the evening. It's not bad to eat carbs, and carbs can be very effective at building up your energy stores and promoting a really, really good night's sleep. So carbs definitely have their uses, but they are much better later on in the day than first thing in the day. So step 4 is just making sure that you get your protein and fats in for energy throughout the day. And step 5, a lot of you are not going to like this one, because as entrepreneurs, and I've been there before, we need caffeine first thing in the morning. Some people, fine, don't have as much caffeine. You might have tea, which does have caffeine in it. You might have an energy drink, which has a lot of caffeine in it. You might have a coffee, which obviously has caffeine in it. However, what you want to try and do, and this really, really helps the 2 p.m. crash, is to not have caffeine at least 90 minutes after you wake up. Now, there's a lot of science behind this, and I'm not going to go into too much detail, but I want to mention it. So in case you want to look it up or whatever, you can. And basically, when you wake up, you have these things called adenosine receptors. And in the morning, they are blocked. And adenosine receptors is, when they're active, is what makes you feel tired. However, they are not active in the morning for the first 90 minutes. So all you are doing is putting a block on something, because caffeine just blocks your adenosine receptors. So all you're doing is putting a block on the things that are already blocked, which doesn't make sense. It's a placebo effect first thing in the morning. However, if you have it after 90 minutes, the adenosine receptors wake up. You might start to feeling tired, but if you have your coffee then, it is like rocket fuel. So if you can avoid having caffeine for the first 90 minutes of your day and then have your coffee or your energy drink or whatever your caffeine is, you will be like fire. So get up, go to the gym. Step 1, get your water and salt in. Step 2, get your sunlight or sad light in. Step 3, do your breath work or your mindfulness for 2 to 15 minutes, depending on how much time you've got. Step 4 is making sure that you get your fats and your protein in as your very first meal to give that energy and that fuel for the day. And step 5 is make sure that you get your caffeine in, or don't have any caffeine until you have been awake for at least 90 minutes. And that's it. Steps 1 to 5. So there's very simple things, not difficult things, very simple things that you can do to manage your cortisol. I guarantee you, if you're not doing 1 or 2 of those things, or even all 5, get them done. It will change you, and it will start reversing your biological age and make you younger, which is the whole point, so that you can provide for your families for generations to come. And you will see generations. I want to live until I'm 150. You might think I'm crazy, but I do believe that it's possible if we manage our biological age correctly. So they were the steps to essentially get your day right and manage your cortisol right from the very end of the day. There are just a few things that I wanted to mention that you can do in the evening to bring your cortisol level down, so that one of the hormones that we're going to talk about, melatonin can then be released so that you can have a really, really good night's sleep. And the things that you need to do are here. I've got them written down. So the things that you need to do are have starchy carbohydrates. So have those carbohydrates in your final meal of the day. Dim the lights, because you want to avoid as much white light as possible. You can get glasses and stuff that remove blue light, but just dim the lights so that you haven't got as many bright lights. Overhead lights are really bad. So if you can get some side lights or lamps, they're perfect. So get the lights down. Next one is have a warm shower or sauna. That helps lower your body temperature, funnily enough, so that you can get to sleep a lot easier. Do long exhale breathing so that you can get your resting heart rate down. So basically shorter inhale, longer exhale breathing. And then a drink in the evening that might allow you to relax that little bit further, help those cortisol levels really drop off to allow for the release of melatonin. Some of the things that you want to avoid are screens, at least within 60 minutes of you going to bed. Intense evening training. It's not very good to go to the gym in the evening if you're going to be going to a bed not long after you finish training. Obviously, caffeine. You don't want caffeine at least 6 hours before you go to bed. Caffeine has a half-life of 12 hours. Sorry, half-life of 6 hours. So basically within 6 hours, half the caffeine's gone. So even if you have 6 hours before, you've still got some caffeine in you, but it doesn't affect you so much. So 6 hours before you go to bed, don't have caffeine. And last but not least, obviously, with dimming the lights, you want to avoid bright lights. So just trying to avoid those in the evening. In the morning, bright lights are really, really good because you want to get that light in to activate cortisol. But in the evening, you don't want bright lights because that's going to activate your cortisol in the evening when you want it dropping so that melatonin can be released so that you sleep a lot better. So I can hear some of you saying, but I need to train in the evening because that's when I get the time to do it. That's fine. Try and train outside of 2 hours before you go to bed. However, try and then do all of the things that we've just discussed. So have a good high carbohydrate meal after you finish training to, one, replenish stores, but also start bringing on that production of melatonin. Dim the lights, take a warm shower, do all those practices that we just literally talked about, but just make sure they're regimental as soon as you finish training. So get the lights low, eat those carbs, have a nice warm drink, have a shower or a sauna if your gym has got one. And that will really, really help if you have to have a evening training session, because it's good to train in the evening. If you can train in the morning, that's better. But if you have to train in the evening because you just need to get the exercise in, then that's a good protocol to have. So I'm over 40. A lot of you probably listening to this are going to be around that level. From 40 onwards, your cortisol naturally flattens. And it's your job as a successful entrepreneur to manage that effectively. So do all the things that will spike your cortisol in the morning and get you going for the day so that you can perform at your highest possible level. And then when you're within 4 hours before you go to bed, or even 6 hours before you go to bed, make sure that you start doing the practices to reduce your cortisol down so that you can get the best possible sleep to recover and repair and therefore reverse your biological age. And this is what the Have It All movement stands for. You need to remember that longevity is the highest form of providing that you can possibly provide. I've said this before, but when you've had a loved one that's passed away, the only thing that you want is you want them back. You don't want their money. You don't want the stuff that they can give you. All you want is them back because you love them. So the biggest gift that you can give your family and your legacy is being around, being present for longer. And I guarantee you, if you get your biological age right, your finances will go through the roof as well. So you'll be providing on every single possible level. So don't underestimate how reversing your biological age will just allow you to provide for longer and longer and longer for the people that you love. So that's it. That's cortisol. If this episode hit home with you, all I ask is that you like, subscribe, and share it with any entrepreneur that needs to hear these lessons. And that's all that I ask. And this is what's going to build the Have It All movement. And it's going to teach male entrepreneurs that longevity is the highest form of providing. I want you to have strength in your body, energy in your mind, and power in your bank account. Remember, be young, be happy, and be free, people.